implying Richard Barrett should be murdered because he was a Darth Vader racist. My question is this. If Richard Barrett was a Darth Vader racist who should be murdered because he won a case in the Supreme Court with which the political media complex disagrees, what are the Supreme Court judges who ruled on his behalf? Are they also Darth Vader racists who should be murdered? And if Richard Barrett is a Darth Vader racist who should be murdered because he won 18 cases in a row with which the political media complex disagrees, what are the 18 juries which ruled on his behalf? Are they also Darth Vader racists who should be murdered? To applaud and cheer the murder of an attorney who won a case in the Supreme Court is just that far from advocating his murder. And advocating the murder of an attorney who won a case in the Supreme Court is just that far from advocating the murder of the Supreme Court judges who ruled on his behalf. Now, if I am also a Darth Vader racist who should be murdered because I won an election with which the political media complex disagrees, what are the 60,000 voters who voted for me? Are they also Darth Vader racists who should be murdered? Now, if Richard Barrett and I are both Darth Vader racists who should be murdered because we won a case in the Supreme Court, because we won 18 cases in a row, and because we won an election with which the political media complex disagrees, what are the people in the political media complex who call for our murder and call for the overthrow of the rule of law and the overthrow of the rule of election? Are they civil rights activists or terrorists and murderers? Now let me explain to you the mechanism that the political media complex uses to murder any candidate or any attorney who dares to try to uphold the rule of law and the rule of election to protect you, the white worker. It is perfectly legitimate for the political media complex to say, do not vote for that vicious, horrible, evil Darth Vader James Hart, because he said, if I win the election, I'll bring the boys home from Iraq, our job back from China, and send the Mexicans back to Mexico. It is attempted murder for the political media complex to do as they did and say, James Hart can be found at 123 Maple Street. What voter needs to know where I am to decide whether to vote for me? They were not talking to the voter. They were talking to the Arthur Bremer personality. When the political media complex gave out my address, that was exactly the same thing as if they took out a gun, pointed at me, and pulled the trigger. To say the political media complex is biased is like saying Al Capone was biased when he robbed a bank. The political media complex uses a camera exactly like Al Capone uses a gun to murder its political opponents. And this is not the first time that the political media complex has used murder and terror to overthrow the rule of law, to overthrow the rule of election, and to thwart the democratically expressed will of the white worker. Consider the case of George Wallace. If George Wallace had won just an additional 1% and 2% of the vote in 2 southern states, he would have received enough electoral votes to have prevented either the Democrat or the Republican from receiving the required 270 electoral votes. They would not have been elected President of the United States. And surely if George Wallace had not been shot, he would have received an additional 1% and 2% of the vote. He then could have gone to the Republican Democratic puppet and said, I will make you President of the United States, or you President of the United States by giving you the electoral votes, and you will agree to stop all Mexican immigration into this country. They would surely have agreed to do that to become President of the United States. There would be no more Mexicans here today than there were at that time. Obama would never have been elected President of the United States. Obama is President of the United States not because of clever use of Facebook, but because of murder and terror, because George Wallace was shot. And today they tell us it's too late for us to protect our children from the Negro-Mexican invader because there are so many of them here now, they'll outvote us in every election. And to prove this to us, they tell us about the importance of the Negro vote, which is 10%. The Mexican vote, which is 13%. But they don't tell you about the importance of the white vote, which is 70% of the vote. The truth is, we whites cannot possibly lose a legitimate election because we're 70% of the vote, unless they trick us into dividing the white vote by saying, you're Democrats and you're Republicans, you have to vote Democrat or Republican. And they tell us, we can't even talk about this because it's hate. Well, I don't see anything hateful about trying to protect our children from the Negro-Mexican invaders. Negroes vote Negro. Mexicans vote Mexican. It's time for the white man to vote white. Now, the political media complex tells you you're wasting your vote unless you vote Democrat or Republican. I tell you, you're wasting your vote if you vote Democrat or Republican. The Democrat Republicans have been playing a shell game with white America for 60 years. In 2004, we voted for the conservative Republican Bush. What did he do? Why, he sent our boys to Iraq, our jobs to China, and brought the Mexicans here to steal our homes and jobs. 2008, we voted for the liberal Democrat Obama. What did he do? Why, he sent our boys to Iraq, our jobs to China, and brought the Mexicans here to steal our homes and our jobs. Obama and Rubio are nothing but pimps and pushers, playing a shell game with white America. Obama says, just sacrifice your children through affirmative action. I'll give you free health care. Just sacrifice your children through affirmative action. I'll give you a nickel more an hour in wages. Just sacrifice your children through affirmative action. I'll give you a free tax break. Well, hear my voice to saying, I represent the 70% of the workers, the white workers that built this country, 70% of the voters. We don't care if the taxes are 1,000%. We don't care if we work for a penny a day. We don't care if we die tomorrow without health care. Our white children are not for sale. White justice. White man, vote white. I'm James Hart, and I approve this message. Paid for by James Hart.